Hi, and welcome to Transitions and Rites of Passage, Unit 11. I'm going to begin with a bow. Hi, and welcome back. So this is our week after spring break, Unit 11. And I think for most of you, it's also our week after you did your transition ceremony. So on both counts, welcome back. This week, we're going to look at one more, actually not one more, this will be the next to the last core concept that we look at this semester. It's a time for you to be working on your integrative paper, which is due this coming Monday, April 4th at the end of the day. So wanted to slip in a reminder about that. The material this week, I think, is subtle. So let me say a few words about it here just to give you the broad picture. There are really two concepts that come together this week. One is what we could think of as individual consciousness, the consciousness that runs throughout the arc of our lives, that the nature of that consciousness changes. An infant's consciousness is very different from a young child's consciousness, an adolescent's consciousness, an adult's consciousness, and let's say a transpersonally or spiritually mature consciousness. These are all different, but we still find a certain thread or through line for each of our lives. So it's a little bit paradoxical that this consciousness can change so radically, can transform, really, as we go through our lives. The consciousness itself is different. It works in a different way. It has new potentials that expand as we mature. This individual consciousness has been called the soul in ancient times, and so I want to use that term here as well. So we can call the individual consciousness the soul, but not to think of it as an entity or a thing. Think of it more as a stream in the ocean or a wave on the ocean. That wave rises from the ocean for a time. There's a swell, there's a wave. It reaches the shore, it crashes, and the water returns to the ocean. So that wave does have its own identity, its own unique expression, its own shape, its own life, its own lifespan. It goes through changes from just a swell in the ocean to a wave with a curl to foam on the beach. And yet there is some continuity through that wave. At the same time, this wave is never separate from the ocean. So the paradox is that we can be this unique and particular individual consciousness or soul, a unique and particular soul, without ever being cut off from the ground of being. So this is, it doesn't fit into conventional concepts, which tell us that if something's unique, it's an entity unto itself. If it's part of the whole, then it's kind of mushed together. The soul is not mushed. So we want to look at this individual consciousness or this soul as it takes this journey. The soul is what takes the journey. It's the self that takes the journey through our lives. And it's the soul that is transformed. The other major concept that comes into play here is maturity. So as this soul grows, it matures. It gains new capacities, new functions, new ways of knowing ourselves. This maturity of the soul is also important this week. When we ask the question, what is it that is transformed? What is it that gets initiated? What's the product of initiation? These two concepts together, I think, go a long way to help us understand that it's a soul which is maturing. So I hope that's helpful as an orientation, and definitely bring your questions into the discussion. I also want to say here, at this time in the semester, we're 2/3 of the way through the semester. Generally, this time of the year, late in the spring semester, the intensity of the academic calendar begins to build. I'm not sure about your work, your papers, when your major projects are due this semester, but I'll just say that I think for all of us, this becomes a time with more intensity, more demand, more stress, more strain. So I want to put in a plug for practicing your meditation, practicing your nature walks, practicing your relaxation, your contemplative practices. Your contemplative practices are especially important this time of year. Ironically, it's also a time of year that we tend to forget about our practices in the midst of what seems like an unending or overfull to-do list. We somehow get this idea that our contemplative practice, which has sustained us, is a luxury that can be put aside. I'm here to say it's not a luxury, it's important self-care. So put in a plug for staying true to your practices, whatever you find those to be. So I'm glad you're here. I'm going to bow. See you online. Bye for now.